And our first order of the evening is to ground us in where we are. Many of you contributed who you are, where you're calling in from. And we wanted to begin with a land acknowledgement, just to affirm that we may be on Zoom, but we are in Montgomery County. And we affirm that we are on the lands of the Piscataway Conoy tribe and the Maconchan people and the Monohawk people, the rightful past, present, and future inhabitants of this land. We further affirm that this county, state, and country were built on the stolen labor of enslaved African people. We resolve to center racial justice in our organizing, in our activism, in our advocacy, and in all that we do. Thank you. So, on to the session, this forum. We are joining Brandy Brooks and an amazing group of climate and environmental leaders to really celebrate the leadership, the brilliance, the vision of Black women in our region, across the country, and around the world. We talk about how Black women's leadership is producing this phenomenal transformative change. It's the core of leadership, of movement building across this planet, and why it is so important for us to create conditions where Black women leaders can grow, can thrive, can reach the highest heights. So this event, it is a forum, it is a discussion, but it's also a fundraiser, you all, because we know that the movement has to be sustained, the work, the organizing, the campaign has to be financed. So it's a forum and a fundraiser, and we thank you for joining us today. We know that through conversations like this, we understand further why it is so important for Brandy's work as an Afro-Latina environmental justice activist to help turn out this vote next month. July 19th is the primary in Montgomery County. We're so looking forward to it, and why it is important for all of us who have a stake in Montgomery County, for those who may have been rooted here for generations, those who, like myself, are immigrants who have come more recently. We all have a stake in Montgomery County, now and for future generations. So this conversation is to help situate us in a candidate, yes, a phenomenal candidate, but also in a range of powerful Black women leaders in climate and environmental justice. So let me, without any further ado, introduce them to you. I'm so honored to have with us tonight Tope Fajingbesi Balogun is a social impact entrepreneur, a published author, and an educator. She is the brilliant creator of SheEO, a global platform for women of African descent to have conversations that matter, that are impactful. In addition, she is a trustee of United for Kids Foundation. She has hosted radio shows, including Impact Africa. She frequently speaks to global audiences and has done phenomenal messages to Hillary Clinton's first presidential campaign rally in Michigan back in 2016. She's spoken in Grand Rapids. She has spoken in Austria. The list is so long. We are so grateful, not only for all that she's done on the political sphere, but she also manages Dodo Farms. She's a certified naturally grown producer right here in Brookville, Maryland. So we are so honored to have you, Tope. We'll come back as we give you the floor in a short moment. But next in line on this phenomenal panel is the sister friend, Rhonda Chapman. Rhonda is joining us really to share her experiences as a woman of African descent who has long loved the environment and has dedicated her life to amplifying Black experiences in the outdoors, whether it be through her work on policy, through work on recreation, or simply just having fun outside. It is her lifelong lived experience and professional commitment to issues of environmental impact, to issues of racial equity, She is currently the Equity Director at the Trust for Public Lands, where she works to bring parks and nature to people and places and spaces all over, not only this county, this city, but throughout the country. And we are so honored to have Rhonda here. She's brilliant and extraordinary. So we will hear from Rhonda shortly. And last, but certainly not least on our panel, is Dany Sigwalt. Dany, many of you know and love, she's from DC, born and raised, right? She has worked on Black queer liberation for decades. We are so honored to have, Dany's like a natural treasure, you all, national treasure. And she is an environmentalist. She's worked in the climate justice world. She's really worked, we first met back in the days of Occupy, organizing on issues of housing, on issues of childcare, on issues of just justice, right? Gentrification in all its forms throughout our neighborhoods here in DC, loss of cultural identity. Dany's been at the forefront of all of these struggles. And she has been over the past few years in the leadership of Power Shift Network, first as operations director and as executive director. She is now on leave and has just published her first book. Dany, we hope you will talk to us about the book and show us a copy of the book so that we encourage people to read it and to understand all of your brilliance, not only for the environment, the planet, but also for self-care, community care, and well-being overall. And last but not least, I have the honor to introduce the candidate herself, who's going to moderate for us this evening. Brandi Brooks, you all know, is an Afro-Latino educator, facilitator, designer, organizer. She brings over a decade, 15 years of experience working on social, environmental, and economic justice. She's currently running, I hope you all know, listen well, call your friends, make sure they know, Montgomery County Council at large. And in this 2022 Democratic primary in July will be election day, key moment for Brandi. She is a progressive policy champion. She organizes for equity and justice in housing, transportation, community food systems, education, employment, economic development, policing, healthcare, voting rights, civil rights, civic engagement. The list is long, but what you should know is that she is tried and true, committed to racial justice in all its forms, committed to women's leadership, understanding the power of collective knowledge and experience, centering those of us whose voices, values, and visions have been pushed to the side for far too long in this county. So we applaud our candidate, our moderator, the work that she's done on LGBTQ issues and people and immigrant rights and renters' rights stands as an inspiration to us all. So without any further ado, I am so honored to turn to our moderator, our candidate, Brandi Brooks. The floor is yours.
I'm just gonna say it, y'all. Y'all should have Amira introduce you sometime because it gives you your entire life to be introduced by Amira Woods. So just make a note of that later. Thank you all so much for being here. And I have to say, so here's one of the things that I love about Zoom. You know, Zoom has been hard because it's, you know, we've been using it so much because we've had to be distanced from one another. But the beautiful thing is that I get to have these moments where I have these pictures of all of these gorgeous people in front of me. And every time I get to do that, I get automatically happy. So even though there are lots of times when I would love to
Can you put me as an interpreter?
I
got out.
No problem.
I'm sorry.
Michelle, if you could get that sorted and get someone in as interpreter, that would be perfect.
Doing that right now. Hold on.
Okay. And as we get that, and again, thank you so much. Our language justice team.
Oh, sorry.
No problem. Again, I want to thank our language justice team. They're helping us do this complex work of being able to offer this in multiple languages, being able to record it, being able to make that available to our communities. It's one of the things that I am proudest of. And so this, our final in our series of people's policy forums, is again a celebration of so much of the work that we've been able to do over the campaign. And it's funny when I think about when we did the first forum, when we did the economic policy forum, I was like, oh my gosh, this forum is amazing. This is my favorite forum. And then we did the housing forum, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. This is my favorite forum. And now we're here, and I'm just so full of joy and excitement, and you all can probably feel it. So I'm going to try and, rein in my energy, so I'm not just, dancing around being crazy over here. But I am thrilled because the heart of so much of the work that I've done in my career and in my advocacy has been based in environment and climate and land use and community food systems. And so this tremendous group of people that you have just heard introduced, these are just, sisters and brilliant inspirations in this work, and they're coming from so many different amazing perspectives. So I'm going to stop talking so you can get to hear them a little bit more talk, because they are so fantastic. And I want to start again, Dany, Rhonda, Tope, thank you so much for being here. It's great to see you. We're going to learn so much from you this evening. And I wanted to start actually with something that I think Dany had mentioned when she was sharing her bio, because it resonated so much with me. In my experience working in environmental spaces, I have struggled. I struggled for a long time with the way that the narrative and the leadership of the movement was so centered on white people. And whenever Black or Brown and Indigenous people, if they were mentioned, because oftentimes we were ignored, but if we were mentioned, we were either tokenized or we were portrayed as, oh, they don't really know anything about the environment, or they don't really care about what's going on with the environment or climate. So, there's a lot of ways that's been a struggle of a space for me to enter into. And I wanted you all each to share your stories. How and why did you get involved in these climate and environmental spaces? And I think, Tope, I see that you're off mute, so I'm going to have you go ahead and go first.
Thank you so much. I got into agriculture, first of all, through farming, about exactly 5 years ago, actually, when my husband moved from Nigeria to join me in the US. And the promise I had made to him was, if you come to America, if I don't have to move back home and you come here, you do what you want. And he said, I want to farm. And I said, oh, that's easy. But of course it was not easy. And that's how I got into, us then looking for land, getting to Montgomery County, which are things that I would talk about later. But one of the most interesting parts of being in this space is when I got into academia on the ag side. And every single day I enter a lecture hall to teach at the University of Maryland. It's almost as if somebody is looking at you and thinking, why is she the one teaching ag business? What does she know about ag business? People are second guessing you. But we are the original ag business people. We're the ones who, unfortunately, our ancestors were the ones who tilled the land, but they weren't paid. But it's their cries and their calls and their prayers that we are answering. So when people say, when did you get into this? I say, okay, yes, 5 years ago, but it was actually about 400, 500 years ago through my ancestors.
Thanks, Tope. I really appreciate that story. And I love too, the story of the deals that we have to make in these partnerships about, how we bring our family lives together. But that's so fantastic. Rhonda, Dany, love to hear from you. How'd you get involved? Rhonda?
Sure thing. I, particularly for the importance of this audience, I think it's worth saying I spent the first 18 years of my life in Montgomery County. So even though I live in DC now, and even though I've lived on the West Coast for half of my life, the way I got into the environment is by way of Montgomery County and the exposures that I had to it. And so, one of the things that always came up for me as a child were the things that made me happy and the things that particularly kept me connected to my father. And so I used to play outside. I was more or less an only child, just that I was the youngest of four. My siblings were significantly older than I am. And so I had to go play outside all the time. It was like, go play outside and make friends with nature. And so I did. And when that translated over into the career space, I will say very early, it's always fun for me to reflect on this, but fresh out of high school, my very first quote unquote professional job was working with Greenpeace, which I thought it was a good idea at the time. There were a lot of things that I didn't know about the organization at the time, which was in the 1980s, I must say. And the way I started to kind of be consumed by the kind of racist undertones that I experience and that exist in the environmental space was by being a canvasser for Greenpeace and going out with my white peers and colleagues and co-workers in a van to go canvassing door to door in Northern Virginia, only to have the door slammed on my face because nobody believed that this Black girl standing at the door could care about these environmental issues. They were looking over my shoulder to see if somebody was hiding in the bushes to ambush the household. Maybe I was just a ploy, maybe I was a con, I was a plant, I was a seed, but I certainly was not there on behalf of the well-being of the environment. And that was over 30 years ago. And somehow, some way, this is something that I have stuck with because it's meaningful to me. Our representation is critical, but it did definitely start in my youth in Montgomery County.
Thank you. And it's fascinating for me to hear these shared threads in the different stories, both the ways that we were already connected through our families, through our histories, through our places, to the environment, to agriculture, to all of these different dimensions, but then entering into these movement spaces, these official spaces, and finding that just that invalidation of our presence in these spaces. And Dany, I'm seeing you nodding, and it sounds like that might resonate with you too.
It definitely does. In my official bio, I say that I used to say that I didn't identify as an environmentalist. I'm honestly not sure if I do at this point either. Because mainstream environmentalism in the US has always been about controlling Black and Indigenous bodies and preventing us from being able to make a living and make, a livelihood off of the land, and be dependent on dominant culture and white economic systems. But my activism has always been rooted in racial justice. I'm a mixed race person. My dad is white, my mom is Black. I identify very strongly as Black. But I've always had exposure to the economic realities that Black folks face and the amount of privilege, especially that exists in the DC metro area, that a lot of white folks have access to, which, is very, very evident in a lot of Montgomery County. And for me, I started working in climate, and I usually make a note to make clear that my focus is climate justice, rather than thinking about the environment writ large. After Hurricane Sandy, watching the ways that my friends in New York were experiencing the crisis, because some folks had property that they owned and had insurance, and other people were renters and had no protections, seeing the ways that the racial wealth gap was just really exacerbated and magnified because of the amount of wealth and access to privilege that people had going into that storm, is something that still really resonates with me, right? Still remembering my now husband having to walk home during the worst part of it when it hit DC, because he was working in a restaurant and they didn't care. They just needed workers to be able to feed the folks in the hotel that he was working at. The social inequities that the climate crisis is creating and will continue to create across racial lines, specifically, but thinking about the climate crisis as a threat multiplier has always been a really key part of the focus that I bring to this work. I joined Power Shift Network in 2016 and have really been able to find a place for myself amplifying that kind of racial justice analysis within this work, because the movement has always historically been really, really white, and it means that there's not been space to build out nuance and theory and understanding about the way that the climate crisis has continued to exist and exacerbate as a result of racism, right? If Black and brown people weren't the first people being most impacted by the climate crisis, we would not have gotten to this point. And we really need to be able to build power in our communities to fight back against big oil. And that's really, really the only way that we're gonna win a livable future for us all. So I appreciate you making this space for this conversation today. It feels very, very fitting for the things that I do. And I'm glad to be able to support your candidacy.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I want to dig in a little bit because each of you just has such beautiful stories and things that I have thought about in my own life, navigating the world, navigating my relationship to the environment, to the land. And Rhonda, actually, I want to come back to you. And this got mentioned in your bio too, just the joy of being outside, the joy of celebrating our experiences, connecting to the air and water and life and land and all the stuff around us. And I'll tell you all a funny little story. I can sometimes be a little bit of a hermit and a couch potato, and I do love the environment of my house. And especially when it's winter, I'll kind of settle myself in here. And earlier this spring, I went and I took a little bit of a personal retreat, as just part of giving myself rest and self-care during the campaign. And I went to this place and I was walking around the woods and walking down to this creek. And all of a sudden, I remembered that I really like being outside. And it was a weird thing that I had somehow forgotten over the months of winter and, also struggling with things like, mental health and depression and that urge to kind of like seal yourself in. And then I went outside and I was like, oh, wait, I love the outdoors. And so, when you were talking about that, Rhonda, that really connected for me. Why is it so important for you to lift up that experience of, and particularly of us as Black people in the outdoors?
Thank you for that. And I'm glad that you had that revelatory experience, because I actually just gave myself an opportunity to do something very similar last week, just go camping out in the woods for a few days with my pup. And you also mentioned something that's really important to me, Brandy, and that is about mental health. And what I find is, on the one hand, there is no separation between agriculture and climate and joy, recreation, health. It's all so interconnected. So I want to quickly give you a nod for having the diversity of our thinking and our approaches to this space coming together in this call, so we can all kind of speak to one particular part of it, but it's all the ecosystem. And so, well done, I appreciate that. But for me, I feel like I have a right to be anywhere I choose to be. And I feel that I do, by way of my ancestors, by way of my lineage, I do come from the land. And so for me to have a relationship with it is my right. And for somebody to say that I'm not allowed, or that I'm an anomaly, or that I'm doing a white thing is very offensive to me. Nobody owns this air, nobody owns this land, this water, all of these amazing relatives that we also refer to as resources. It belongs to all of us. And so when I can go into a space that cultivates joy, that gives me peace of mind, that gives me an opportunity to have clarity of thought, to have rest, to have solitude, that is exactly where I choose to be. And so it does also coincide with the fact that, I grew up as a very athletic person, and there's a lot of really fun athletic things you can do outside. And so that also nourished kind of that fitness part of my well-being. And I just think that I want to be in the places, like I said, that make me happy, the places that bring me joy, and that is outside. You can see I've got plants all in this room and every room in my house. I try to be surrounded by life because nature is the one thing I can trust, right? It's the one part of this ecosystem that has never betrayed me. So that means that I have a responsibility to protect it for our whole collective well-being, right? And so, I could talk about this for a really long time. I truly could, but it is important for me to be there because it's my right. It's absolutely my right. It's all of our right. And so if it means that I can get engaged from a policy perspective, if it means that I can get engaged when I'm talking about the outdoor industry and all of these big money makers who continue to make money, and I know that I feed into it. I buy the brands and I shop at the big co-op store that some of us are members of and have been for a long time. I do participate in the consumerism, and that's something that I have to kind of reconcile with. So that means if I'm giving you my money, that means you need to pay attention to my voice. That means that you need to start creating opportunities for folks like me to go into spaces where I am welcomed, where I am safe, where I belong. That means if you're building a park, that's a park for everybody. That is not a nice to have. That is an absolute essential piece of our landscape. That's an essential piece of our well-being. So there's so much to it. And a lot of people look at, being outdoors as something that's optional, as it's something that's a nice to have, an amenity, et cetera. But that's really actually not the case at all. And so it's important for me to be there. It's important for all of us to be there because it has been exclusive since the very beginning. And it's been rooted, if you look at the conservation movement, that's rooted in eugenics, it's rooted in racism. They tried to erase all of us off the map. We were not included. And so for those of us, we know better. We're going to be here and we're going to fight for our place and our right to take up the space as well.
And
Yeah.
Rhonda, I think that that's so important. I appreciate all of these pieces. And I want to just offer that when we talk about the political landscape now, they're eco-fascists out here who like really are buying into that idea that Black people don't belong outside, to the extent that white nationalists are pushing eco-fascism as a possible climate solution, right? Saying that part of replacement theory has to do with climate change, in that they think that the immigrants and folks of color in this country are the reason why we don't have enough resources, which is hilarious because like white supremacy has really been the root cause of so much of the environmental degradation that we've faced. But it's like an active thing. It is an active conversation that folks in these scary circles are having. And so you owning being outside and claiming space is something I really appreciate as someone who is not really comfortable in the nature. I'm working on it. I know that it's really important. Really also want to offer that where we live is our environment, right? Like everything around us, including our bodies, are the environment that we live in. And like creating separations between a pristine, untouched nature and just outside our front doors is something that we need to be really conscious of, because outside is what determines our health, right? Like those social determinants of health.
100%. Can I quickly respond to that, Brandy?
No, go for it. Yeah.
Because one of the things that you just said, Dany, that I really think is important, a lot of times when we're talking about equity, we use terms like access as the only indicator for what equity means. And I actually believe that access begins in the mind before you even walk out your front door. And if we can create the infrastructure, the conversations, the mindset, so that folks know when they do wake up and they choose to go and sit on their stoop, they are recreating. They are in the outdoors, to your point. We don't have to be prescriptive about what you wear, what you look like, what it means to hike, to walk, to sit outside. If you are out your front door, you are absolutely engaging in the outdoors. And I think that's a really important point.
So can I say something as the president of the Couch Potatoes Association? So Brandy and Dany, you guys have nothing. Like, you guys are not even there. I'm the president. The only nature I believe that I trust, like Rhonda is talking about the part of the ecosystem that you trust, the only one I trust is the beach side. And please note, I cannot swim. So I just sit by the beach and just listen to it and talk to it, and it talks back to me. However, one thing that I'm very protective of is the rights of those people who love to be outside, who want to engage. And I remember I was in a meeting by some officials, I shall not say which level of government, and one of the gentlemen who is white said, I said something and he said, "That's not how it's done here." And this has been like maybe 3 or 4 years because I was very new to the county and to Agam County. And that sentence really bothered me. It really bothered me because I said, where's here? Is here America? Because I'm not originally from here. Is here Montgomery County? Where exactly is here? And so for me, I made it my duty to make sure that here is here, the same here that my ancestors came and traveled all of this time and put seeds in their braids. That's here. That here is Lagos. That here is Senegal. That here is, we're all here. And so how can we enjoy that here? The only way to enjoy that here is to have money. I'm from a part of Nigeria called Jebu. We love money. We love money, we love parties, we love a good life. And if you're poor, if we people of color, if we're poor, if women, if we're poor, if we don't have the economic power, then they're going to keep talking about here as if we don't belong, not just because of our color, but because of the size of our purse. So I always say to people when they say, how can I support Black farmers? I say, buy from us so that we can afford to have that land. Buy from us so that we can afford to tell people that I'm here. And here means wherever I want it to be, whether it's in my house, on my couch, or outside on a 5-acre or 50-acre farmland. We need money to be able to call the shots.
Well, I love that. And Tope, you are foreshadowing some things we're going to be talking about a little bit later in this evening session. But I also have to ask, because it cracks me up, as the official president of the Couch Potato Society, how on earth did you end up farming in Brookville? So tell me how you're working that out.
Yeah, it is. You know what? I always tell people that in my entire college of agriculture, I'm probably the only lecturer who has not spent time in the community garden. And I don't feel like I'm missing anything. However, I can tell you what is more profitable, whether it's a Russian kale or a traditional green curly kale. So I always see my farming, my agriculture as the dollars and the cents of it, because that's what determines, success. If you look at the statistics in Maryland, there is an aging population of farmers, average age of 59, which has been creeping up, steadily and slowly. But there is also in Montgomery County, only about 7% of the farmlands that is held in Montgomery County is held by non-white identifying people. So for me, I see my farming as academia, activism, and business. So while I let my husband go dig the ground, and God bless him, he can be in the sun for like 24 hours straight and he will not die. Me, just let me see how much it costs. And let's see where we're going to make the money. That's the kind of farmer that I am.
I love it, because actually one of the things that I was thinking about as I was thinking about your role and your leadership in this space is that, nationally, only 1.4% of farmers in the United States identify as Black. And this is down from a century earlier, it was 14%. Which was much more aligned, I think, with our representation in the population. So you occupying the space, and so much of that is actually a result of the intentional, like concentrated dismantling of Black economic power and the relationship of Black people to land, and to being able to have land that we can say is ours, that we are on, where we're creating and defining the here. And so, I'd love for you to tell me more as you're leading in this space of really making that connection between land and food and our economic power. Like, what are you seeing as how we need to be organizing around this? Because there's a clear organizing call here around how we use our connections and our relationships to actually build this power that we need to declare the here and our presence in it.
Absolutely. I think that's such a crucial, critical question. So there are two things that I'm trying to do. One of them is, so when I'm in the university, and maybe we would have maybe 30 students coming to applied agriculture, and of the 30, there'll be 2 who will be Black. And then I always have this conversation with them. They know this. There will be a time when I'll say, come to my office, and they think it's about a homework. I'm like, no, sit down, close the door. Then I say, how many people do you see here? And they're like, not a lot. I'm like, exactly. So you don't get here and start acting the fool. You don't. Because when you do that, you slam the door in the face of other people who are coming. So you need to let them know that we belong here and let other people know that this is where we need to be. So I think that being in academia in such a wide space, because teaching in agriculture in Maryland is so wide, I don't even know how to explain it. I remember giving an assignment to my students once, and I said, go find, it was, I think, Black History Month. And I said they should go find an African-American business owner, not a farmer, just a business owner, and talk to them about race in their business, and then come to a conclusion about the impact of race in business. And this student raised up his hand. And I said, yes, question. He said, where am I supposed to find somebody who looks like that? You know, oof, the Nigerian in me wanted to yell, but the American in me said, ooh, sorry, just be calm. So I turned to the rest of the class and I said, where can he find somebody like that in Prince George's County? And people said, on Route 1, right outside campus. There are Black people who own businesses there. But this is, you know, the kind of space that our kids and the future generation is stepping into. The second thing that I'm doing is, so I run an organization called SheEO. It's for women of African descent, and also run the business of Dodo Farms. And I'm trying to bring both together during the next Black History Month with something called SIFA, Sisters in Food and Ag. I want to get a list of all of the women who are of Caribbean descent, African descent, Brazilian, as long as, you know, our ancestors were there, and you're trying to do food and ag in this country. I want us to come together and talk about access and have those conversations, because you see, a problem that you share is a problem that is solved. By speaking out about the things that they are going through, I believe that we will find sisterhood and we will find resilience. So hopefully, you know, that would happen during Black History Month next year. Awesome.
Well, please, I'm going to just raise my hand right now to be signed up for that, because I 100% want to be in that space. That sounds absolutely amazing. And, you know, I want to name, because it's something that we deal with so often that we accommodate to it a little bit, but I want to name what's happening in my body as you are talking about some of these experiences that you're talking about, as you're talking about this person being like, we don't do that this way here, or having the temerity in Prince George's County to say, where am I going to find a Black business owner? I just need to name how that lands in my body, and that this is part of what, you know, and having the, you know, whether it's the Nigerian in you, the Honduran in me, you know, like what, like want to jump out of our bodies and shake someone, but then having to figure out how to navigate in such a way that we don't, you know, make them think, oh, okay, that's that crazy Black woman doing crazy things. And, you know, like, and just that's a constant tension of how do we figure out how to show up as ourselves, and be honest about the impact of those kinds of crazy interactions every single day. So I want to name that before I shift to Dany asking you a question, because you have a new book that is entitled, and I love this title, so I want everyone to know why you need to read it, because this book will save the planet. A climate justice primer for activists and change makers.
Yeah.
I love the boldness of it. And I want you to tell us, one, you were very clear that climate justice is the sphere that you work in. So please, what do we need to know about climate justice? And what do we need to know about the leadership that's happening there that we need to be following and supporting?
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. Here is my book. I got real copies yesterday, many of them. It's very exciting. So this book was written specifically for 12 to 16-year-olds as a really accessible entry point to climate activism. I work with young folks, primarily Gen Zers, on a daily basis. And the way that people not that much younger than me, but you know, a bit younger than me are really thinking about the limited options that they're facing, because they understand that our planet, our ecosystems are under attack, and humans' ability to live like abundantly, peacefully, with the resources that are necessary to sustain human life, just dwindling. And it's all an issue of political will and political power and people who want to maintain the status quo. So in this book, I've broken it down in a lot of ways, and talking about the history of the climate crisis, noting that a lot of the mainstream climate movement historically has cited the onset of the climate crisis as being the Industrial Revolution, where folks first started burning coal to produce materials for manufacturing. If you talk to BIPOC activists, Black and Indigenous activists primarily in the States, will make it really clear that that is not the beginning of the climate crisis. The climate crisis started in 1492 when Christopher Columbus and all of these other explorers were exploring new lands that many other people had lived in for thousands of years in order to extract natural resources to make a profit, and really concentrate wealth in ways that are just incredibly dangerous for the majority of humanity. So I've broken that down for young people in really accessible ways, talked a lot about the basic science of the climate crisis, talked about oceans, which is very scary, because so many people depend on oceans for our food, and really mapped out what alternatives exist, right? Like how young folks can take action, but really explaining powerfully for a youth audience that capitalism isn't really our only option, that there are lots of folks out here right now in the present day who are building a new future, a new reality, a new economy that can uphold and meet all of humanity's needs and the environment's needs as well. And that we just need to really be committed to it and believe in this other world that we are building together every day.
Yeah, I love it. One of the things I love about the work you do is that you are, supporting and cultivating the leadership of our young people, because I hear this all the time on the campaign trail, like this sense of despair on one hand, because young people are sitting here and they're looking at what we're doing and they're like, I don't know what you are about to leave me with when you finally decide to step aside. And you were just going to leave me with the garbage that you have left here, literally as well as metaphorically. But then also these young people who are brilliant and are like ready and are energetic, and they are, if we would, stop crowding the space and say like, hey, wait a minute, there are all these people who have a very different way of thinking about this. We could get some amazing new understanding in here of how we approach this. So one, just thank you for that. And then I was curious, you talk about history and knowing, I think, the true history of the climate crisis. There's also a true history of our resistance, right? And of the tools that we've used to fight back. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that one of my favorite things about Black folks is that across the globe, we're able to find joy, right? And build culture for ourselves and build connectivity, like a sense of connection and belonging. I think that that's just been an incredible through line. But I also think that in the US specifically, there have been a lot of really, really powerful environmental justice movements and moments that aren't really regarded as such, because environmentalism has been seen and branded as such a white people issue, right? So one of the moments that I always point to as a really seminal EJ battle was the sanitation workers strike, where Martin Luther King was organizing when he was murdered in Memphis. So these folks were fighting for workplace safety, but also like health, because they were getting sick. The right to live in an environment where we're able to maintain optimal health is definitely a right that a lot of folks are denied. And organizing for the environment looks so many different kinds of ways. I think that that's something that folks really need to be able to grasp, right? So one of the things that we talk about at Power Shift Network, we have these t-shirts that are pretty iconic at this point that say climate justice is racial justice, is environmental justice, is gender justice, is trans justice, is economic justice, is all of these things, because they don't live in a vacuum. And climate justice for me, when I talk about it, is like really figuring out what it means to be in right relationship with the earth and making sure that folks are able to have self-determination to live the lives that they feel called to. That's pretty far from where we are in a lot of ways right now, but literally, to my mind, every social justice issue is a climate justice issue. And understand like very clearly in the current political moment that resilient communities are the communities that are best situated to resist the impacts or like withstand the impacts of the climate crisis, right? So like if folks have access to like good healthcare systems, it means that our bodies are going to be better able to withstand like increased temperatures, or if folks have like good stable access to housing, they're not gonna be dealing with the climate crisis as homeless folks or as housing unstable folks. Like every single issue of social justice is ultimately a climate justice issue.
Yeah, thank you. That's so powerful. And when I think, like, I love the example that you brought of the sanitation workers organizing. I think also of the examples of so many ways that people have come, that I've seen our people come to the climate movement, and how much it has been about that interconnection between climate, between environment, between toxic hazards. You know, there's so much that's come out of the toxics movement in terms of people responding to this. And it's because the way that these impacts land, you know, I find this all the time talking in Montgomery County. People are like, well, you know, what's really an environmental issue? And it's like, well, an environmental issue might show up in the air quality of my apartment. It might show up in, you know, a lot of my family getting cancer or asthma. It might show, like, it's going to show up all these different ways, and you don't separate it,
right?
You know, and it's that kind of separation, that separation from our lived experience, that separation from our own knowing, our own ways of knowing about how our environment is impacting us, that people keep trying to make happen. But that's actually, I think part of the reason people keep trying to make it happen because when we are connected to that, our experiences, both positive and the experiences of harm, then that is the basis and motivation for our organizing. Because whether we are organizing around toxics, whether we are organizing around the economy, whether we are organizing around the damage that we are seeing happen from these storms, whether we are organizing around our food systems and our health, we are doing this from the point of like, we are seeing this as an issue of our survival. And we are jumping in this, not just, you know, Rhonda, going back to what you were saying, not because this is like a nice idea to be out here in the environment, a nice idea to be out here engaging in these things, but because this is essential for us to be able to live and breathe and be, you know, it is so essential that we do this work. Oh my goodness. I could talk about this forever with you all, but we are bounded in this particular amount of time, but this is just the beginning of some of these conversations. And I know that Michelle has posted in the chat and encouraging our folks to like get ready, because it's going to be your turn. I've gotten to ask some great questions of these folks on here, but it's going to be your turn to ask some questions of this amazing panel about their experience, about the things that you want to learn from them, about the things that you're hearing that are resonating. And so before we do that, I want to hand it back to our MC, Amira.
Wow. What inspiration, what joy, what brilliance. Thank you all for that panel. I wish we had another hour just with each of you. We need an hour for the book for sure, Dany. But your wisdom is just, it always leaves my mind just, totally grounded, and just wanted to say thank you. You brought us to the ancestors 500 years ago. You brought us forward through the leadership of young people. You brought us outdoors, thinking about just getting on your stoop in your apartment or having your plants in your space, all of that, right? So thank you for your work. Thank you for your wisdom. More to come in the Q&A, but I wanted to turn over to the phenomenal Tamara Tools O'Loughlin to please introduce yourself. And then what's our call to action? Couldn't think of anyone better to do that call to action. We turn to you tomorrow.
Hello, everyone. I am here in the middle of God's country, wherever the heck that is, these days. I'm on the road, but I am normally coming from Lenape land. My pronouns are she, her, hers. My name is Tamara Tools O'Loughlin. I'm a climate activist, a strategist, an environmental justice agitator, and someone who generally believes that if you care about people, you should show it to them. And that care often shows up in a number of ways. But in the moment that we are in, when every single thing we care about is involved in a cascading crisis and a political strategy that will destroy us, I feel like we're at a point where if we're not honest about where we really see care and repair, it's the budget. So I'm here to follow up behind my sisters in this work to talk about Brandy's movement, what she is pushing for, and how you can show up to support her. It is important to show your love, to cast a vote, to bring in other folks. But in this moment, it's deeply important that you open your pockets, that you call a friend, that you write a check or 2 or 3 for as much as is humanly acceptable, or the amount which Michelle Whitaker will correct me, based on where you live. But now is the time for us to put our money where our mouth is, because the revolution must be resourced. And if you don't think we're in a revolution, you're not paying enough attention. This is a powerful period of transition, of dismantling. And it's important for us to support leaders who are pushing for the remantling, for restoring order, for giving space to our community, for not separating out issues, for the continued oppression of Black, Indigenous, people of color, of women, of the poor, rural and urban. And now is the time for you to show your love, your care and repair, and to invest in a different vision of the future. One that we're actually in, by the way, because the current modality is not one that will allow many of us to survive. And I can see Michelle's note. The number for today is $250. Call a friend on 2 or 3 and get it up to 1,000, because this moment is here. Montgomery County talks the talk, but the budget is where it walks the walk. If you don't see Black women in leadership, then you do not see progressive politics at play. If you do not see Black women in levels and positions of strategy, then you are watching Black women be used for optics. Here's a time when you draw a line in the sand. Thank you so much for your attention. And I'm glad to be here on behalf of Black women, Black lives, Black livelihood, and Black life. Thank you.
Powerful. That's what we needed, right? I hope you all are writing the checks and or using the PayPal and Venmo, many different options. So please go to Brandy, Brandy, 4 Montgomery.com. Brandy 4 Montgomery.com/donate. The revolution must be resourced. No better way to say it, right? Black women leaders need the support to make sure that their vision and values, and our vision and values, are represented on the Montgomery County Council and all other political bodies around this country, around the world. So we are now at the point for our Q&A with the panelists and Brandy. So I'm going to ask all those who are interested in asking a question. You can raise it in the chat. You can raise your hand to speak your question. We have multiple languages, Amharic, Spanish, ASL. We're so grateful to all the interpreters for making it possible. So please, this is the time for you to ask your questions of these phenomenal panelists. What did you hear that resonates from Montgomery County? I live in Aspen Hill, been here for a good while now. And I know there's some questions about, just the lack of women leaders that are looking for lifting up the environment, and that are farmers that are putting their hands in the soil, understanding the power of seed, the power of land. What are your questions based on where you are in Montgomery County? All right, Rebecca, thank you so much. What are the best ways to support minority agriculture?
And
So
I'm going to
maybe-
ask our panelists to come back on video so we can chat and have some
Yes.
conversation. And I think, you know, first, definitely want to throw it over to Tope, because I know you've got some thoughts about this.
I definitely do. Thank you so much. I always say the first way to support us is to buy from us. That puts money in our pocket, and it gives us the capacity and the rights to be here, to have access. For every one person who deliberately decides to buy from a Black farmer, there are 9 other people who walk past us in DuPont Circle, who don't even know that we're there. This is our 3rd year in DuPont Circle, and some people will still come and say, "Oh, did you just get here?" Because they just keep walking past, they don't see you. So every time you then decide that I'm going to buy from them, you're putting money in our pockets. You're helping us to be able to expand. You're helping us to be able to bring you food that is good for you. And I want to say one quick thing we're talking about the environment, and people usually don't think about the linkages between food and this life that we're living. But I had chest pain forever before we started farming. It was just really ridiculous that my chest was paining me. And then when I went to the hospital, they said, "You need to stop eating tomatoes." And I'm Nigerian. Look, everything is jollof rice. Everything is tomato. Like, what are you talking about? And then we started farming. And we started farming tomatoes. And now I don't have any chest pain when I eat tomatoes. Why? Because we grow food in its most natural state. Our allegiance is not to profit. Our allegiance is to the earth and to the people. So once you support farmers who are good land stewards, you're also helping the environment. You're also making sure that you can live long and live well.
Thank you so much. Supporting good land farmers. We ask you to please, if you can, Tope, also put the name of your farm. Where can people buy your good, healthy foods? Please put that into the chat.
Yeah.
And thank you so much, Jane, for asking that. I think there was someone who wanted to voice a question.
I do want to voice a question, if I may. I'm gonna be a observer rather than a panelist, because one of the things that was touched on was about our health. And so our emotional health, our spiritual health, our physical health, etc. And we know that Black women are regularly facing the highest levels of disparities across the entire health spectrum. And I'm curious about how the county can be investing in our collective well-being. How does it become a line item in a budget? How can we encourage and inspire leaders who have the purse strings to make those investments so that we can continue to show up in the ways that we are here in this conversation and all the days forward?
Yeah, gosh, so I'm gonna definitely chime in on this one. And you know, Rhonda, I've been thinking since you were having your initial conversation, the word that was coming up for me was embodied. It was like, as you were talking about all of these things, I was just thinking about how direct the relationship is between my body and that sensation of wellness when I get to be outdoors, or between my body and that sensation of wellness when I am hydrated, or when I am eating food that has been grown well and that I know is having good, healthy interactions with my body. And, you know, similarly, that sense of wellness when I get to have the social connectivity with people, you know, so there are all these things that are linked: social connectivity around food, social connectivity around activity. And, you know, I think it's actually, for me, it's starting as I'm thinking about, okay, where are the places where my body needs to feel right? And then what does that lead me to think about in terms of policy solutions? So, you know, and I actually want to start. So I live in a multifamily complex, a condo complex here in the Kensington Wheaton area. And, you know, and it begins with things like, what are the policies that we set around how you have to provide, for instance, open space, and people having like real access to open space in multifamily housing? Because when we were talking about this idea of like when we get to be outside, or outside being considered an amenity, not a necessity, I thought immediately of the place where I live. I thought about actually how blessed I am to have a place that where we do have a bunch of grassy areas in my condo complex. Also, where we've got some folks who want to restrict our access and our use of those grassy areas because they're supposed to be maintained. You know, how we do things here is supposed to be maintained in a certain way. So that was one of the first policy places, like how are we working around those kinds of regulations that say that actually if you're going to build housing, people have to be able to be connected to places where they can safely and enjoyably be outside in the world and where they're not locked up in these sealed boxes. I think very much, you know, when it comes to food and agriculture, everything from how do we make it possible? How do we think about transportation linkages across various parts of the county so people can come and can experience Dodo farms or can experience all of these other farms? How do we make sure that there are good transportation linkages so not only can you find Dodo farms in DuPont Circle, but that we're making sure that your food is getting out to market stands, is getting out to grocery stores, is getting out to bodegas, is getting into schools. Like, you know, I'm thinking about all of these things, like where are people getting access to that wellness, and then also access to the space that you all are creating on the farm and the experience of it. You know, this is one of the stories that I tell people about my food system experience. I've been eating collards all my life. But ask me how old I was when I saw a collard plant in the ground. I was 35 years old. And I walked up and I was like, oh, here's this beautiful, like silver green plant. This is so gorgeous. Can somebody tell me what this is? This looks so magical. And somebody said collards. And I was like, what are you talking about? It's like, that's a collard plant. I had been eating this thing for over 3 decades. And I've never seen it in the ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and so it's those kind of things, like how are we building those transportation networks? So these are the things that I think about in terms of how we begin to translate policy. And I do think that, you know, to the point that Tamara was making, when people have different embodied experiences, they're going to produce different kinds of policy because there's a different resonance. There's a different thing that you're thinking about in terms of what you want to make sure your body has in order to experience that wellness and that joy. The other thing I think about all the time, and then I want to go, I see Ken has a question, is having access to water is like critical for my well-being. And one of the weirdest things about living in Montgomery County, so if you look on a map, we're on the East Coast, we're on the, you know, water shouldn't be that far away, but actually getting to water is kind of a hard thing to do in a lot of places, especially if I want to get to big water. So I think all the time, and this is in comparison to when I lived in the Boston metro area where I could get on the T and I could be at like 3 different beaches, because Tope the beach is also my happy place. I could get to 3 different beaches in a half hour on public transit, and then a bunch more if I was able to get on the commuter rail. And I think about what that means for policy in terms of even being able to get to some of the parks and recreational resources here in Montgomery County that feel so difficult to access without a car. So
here you have a candidate who breaks down the silos, doesn't only think about the issues of the environment as it impacts our health, but thinks about transportation needs, right? For those who are wanting to get out in the outdoors and be in open spaces, and what are those needs? So she's connecting the dots in such a powerful way. So again, please remember, this is a fundraiser to support a candidate. All of your donations will be matched up to $250. So get out your, all it is, Venmo, Cash App, checkbook, whatever it is, this is the time to do it. And we know we've got a question. We've got Ken coming up wanting to ask a question. We also have a question from Tamara about Montgomery County living its values, supporting emerging leadership of BIPOC communities and the diaspora that is building this future. This, as Dany said, building the world that we want, that we know we need for the future and for our lives now. What is Montgomery County doing? So Brandy, we want to come back to you to respond to that, but let's give Ken an opportunity to ask his question as well.
Hi, everybody. Yes, Brandy, I got in. I am not tech savvy. I never will be. We can discuss that some other time. I'm a 70-year-old aging Jewish hippie at the southern end of downtown Silver Spring. You guys are incredibly eloquent. The point blank question, and I hope I pronounce your name right, is T-A-P-E. You're the farmer. Have you ever exhibited at the Silver Spring Farmers Market? I don't drive, so that in downtown Tacoma Park is about all I can get to. And overall, and this is to everybody, you know, all the BS we've been through for the past couple of years, and I feel like I lost 4 years of my life thanks to he who we do not name and his allies and enablers. And I, you know, really have concluded that an economic system that requires endless growth and prioritizes the short-term need for profit is not compatible with preservation of the environment. I don't know where to go with that. I really don't have a lot of optimism anymore because we went so far, so fast in the wrong direction under you-know-who. And
we got your question.
yeah,
It's
okay.
a question many of us share, Ken. Thank you so much.
So yes, we do go to the Silver Spring Farmers Market downtown every Saturday. We are right next to the information stand. You see my husband there every Saturday bright and early. We are the farm right next to the information stand at the market.
Thank you so much, Tope. Now, Brandy, you got all these questions about Montgomery County living up its values. Montgomery County, we need you to answer as only you can. This is why we are here supporting you as a candidate for Montgomery County Council. Brandy?
Right. So yeah, so there's a couple things I want to talk about, and it actually ties to one other part of Ken's question, which I think is really important for us to understand, which is that Donald Trump was one of the end products of things that have been going on for decades and centuries. And it's really important that we keep that in mind. Things that have been going on for decades and centuries under all political parties. Because again, as Dany noted, and let's not forget about this, is that the history of what we're talking about goes back over, over 500 years. And so when we talk about how we got here, we have to recognize that we have both of the parties that we deal with have been operating in this system that says that the prioritization is the concentration of capital, that the prioritization is people being able to make amounts of profit that we literally can't conceptualize in our brains, and structuring our whole economy to be able to make a curve. I don't know if anyone's ever seen this, but to make a curve for our economy where it's like, and all of us are in here, and then it goes like that, and that's where like 1% of the people in the United States, and they have just an unbelievable percentage of the wealth. I forget what the exact percentage is, but it's so distorted. And that's what we've created. And one of the reasons I'm running, and I want to remind folks that I'm running within the Democratic primary in Maryland. The county council of Montgomery County is all Democrats. Our state legislature is heavily Democratic. But we are still, well, and again, big D, not little d, actual democracy, Democratic. We are still dealing with this issue of having a structure of our economy and our society and the way that we think about representation, and who has actually had voice, that even within that big D Democratic Party, these same patterns are replicating. And it's not that there's not a distinction, degrees matter. But we also have to recognize that even within, if we're Democrats, we have to make some choices about what we actually think Democrat means, and is it something that is compelling enough that people understand that there's a difference? Because one of the reasons why folks are saying it feels like there's no difference is because materially in their lives, it doesn't feel like there's that much of a difference when it comes to whether or not they're adequately housed, when it comes to whether or not they have jobs where they can provide for their loved ones, when it comes to whether or not they have access to healthcare. Not enough people are feeling the difference when it comes to whether or not their stand will be recognized or ignored when they are present in a place, or where someone will look at them sideways for being in a place they are not experiencing enough difference. People are telling us something about their lived reality, and we have ignored it to the peril of everyone. And so when we talk about what it looks like to live into our values, one of the reasons that I am running is because we must actually pay attention to what people are telling us about the reality that they experience within our current construct, our current political economy, and recognize that there are major shifts that we have to make, not tweaks, not fiddles, major structural changes that we have to make in order for us to get to the place where there is a significant distinction in the experience that people have of their material lived reality, of their embodied reality. And I'm curious to hear, Dany and Rhonda, like, as you think about this, as two folks who've grown up in this county, like, what are you thinking about as we're talking about this in terms of how it applies to Montgomery County?
I mean, there's several things to reflect on, and kind of going back into this theme that I'm hearing conveyed in a different way around erasure. There's a lot of confirmation bias inside the politics, and because the county has a reputation for being so affluent, because the county has a reputation for being just a shiny, glossy, ever expanding place, a lot of people are getting lost in the process. And so what you're naming around those principles and around the silencing and the invisibilizing of people is really, really essential. Yeah, that's really all I have to say about that. You're really just naming, you're naming a big problem, one that I, had all the time growing up. And regardless of where, you fell on the economic spectrum, it was one thing, it's such a classist county that it becomes painful. It's palpable, the classism that exists there. And so being able to have a leader who is able to come in and lift up those voices of those who are being silenced, who are being overlooked, who are being erased, I think is just an incredible opportunity for your leadership.
Thank you. Dany, I see that smile over there.
I don't know how I followed that up though, Rhonda, because I think that was just such a powerful point that you've made. But I think that there's so much possibility in Montgomery County to be like a shining light example. And the county is in a lot of ways, in a lot of respects already. But when it comes to equity, there's so much work that can be done that I know that there's energy around. Rhonda, like, totally spot on talking about just like having a leader who's really invested in lifting up folks whose voices wouldn't be amplified otherwise, and helping make Montgomery County the powerful multicultural place where people can go and thrive and live and thrive.
Yeah. Tope, what's resonating for you?
I'm just sitting out here thinking about how, you were talking about what you were feeling in your body. That's exactly how I was feeling when we were talking about Montgomery County and class. I came here from Baltimore County, then to Howard County, and then to Montgomery County. And I have never, ever been in a county that has such segregation as Montgomery County. So one of my hopes, one of my feelings is that when we elect leaders like you, that we can erase and blur some of those lines. Because one of the issues that I've been working on, that I've been very involved with, is land access. And in that area of land access, I just cannot tell you how disappointing and how heartbreaking it has been to email with somebody and say, oh yeah, you're going to lease land from them. And then when you pick up the phone, they immediately sense that, you know, this is not somebody who wants to lease to, and they don't tell you, no, we're not listening to you. And then when you get there, they start giving you all of these conditions. And when you try to talk to the policymakers, it's like they're hearing, but they're not hearing. So I'm thinking there must be something, you know, there must be something that we can do, and what we can do, which is why I'm very happy that I came here today, is to really have access to the leaders that we elect, that we have those access. I'm hopeful for this candidacy, as well as, you know, some others from my own particular district, because I remember very early in the season, the person who introduced me to you, Brandy, she brought the current county council president to our farm, and we hosted a discussion on the farm about 2 Fridays ago. That's because some officials in the department wanted, you know, farmers in Montgomery County to meet with this official, but they weren't going to call us. Who are we? They said it's only for agri leaders. How many farmers are in Montgomery County? My goodness. So they were like, no, we only want to call agri leaders, as if we don't have any issues. So the lady who introduced us decided to have her own convening and got into the county council's president's calendar and brought him to our farm. We hosted that discussion, and it was such a very important discussion because, again, I'm a firm believer in conversations. So if we have people who we have access to, people who feel our pain, people who understand, you know, the issues that we're facing, I think this is the only way we can move forward and blur those lines in this county.
Yeah, and you know, I'm wrestling, and again, I want to name this as I'm continually trying to stay in touch with my, you know, my embodied reality, the combination of the heaviness and the frustration, because yes, I remember getting told about that, you know, we only want agricultural leaders. It just, and there are still times where it still boggles my mind that people will say these things, like that they will come out of their mouths with a straight face in the year of our Lord 2022. Sometimes I don't understand it. But then at the same time, I also get really excited because even though folks keep trying to put up these roadblocks to redefine the here, to redefine the who, to say what the how has to be, that we do have these legacies and these traditions and these networks that we are building that allow us to be resilient and to respond. And it's actually very interesting, that same person was able to help connect me to a space where I had been excluded as a candidate, because she was like, hey, no, you know, I'm looking out and I'm like, wait a minute, something's going on over here where there's this, you know, this structural separation of folks who are trying to do this kind of advocacy from the places where conversations are happening. And as we are building these networks, as we are building this connectivity, we actually do increase our ability to respond and to do an end run around these folks who are trying to keep us separate from all of our possibilities. And so that is the part that gets me excited, is because I do see that I see what we are building, I see what's growing, and I see what the opportunities are that are there. And when I think about Montgomery County, I definitely see the inequity. And then at the same time, though, I see our people, I see what's happening in our communities, I see the way that folks have been building just robust, beautiful, like business and community and social and organizing networks that are maybe not as much connected to the political space, but people are organizing themselves to address the critical things in their lives. And it's how do we build those connections so that we can all work together, and that people can be able to apply their power in that political space, in that economic space, so that we change this game. And that is what gets me excited. And it's what gets me excited about this panel, is that you all are game changers. And each one of you in the spheres that you are working in are, you are mixing it up, whether people want you to or not. And that also, I talk about this all the time, you all are part of what I'm bringing to council. Like, and that's very real to me, is that when I go in there, when I go into these spaces, I'm not just be able to bring my experience. I am able to say, hey, I can call up Tope, I can call up Dany, I can call up Rhonda, I can call up Amira. There's so many other amazing people on this call. I can call up Jane, I can call up Tamara. Like, I can call up these folks, and we're going to come together with the fullness of our experience. And we are going to bring the revolution to these spaces, because that is what we are able to do together. So I'm also just very excited about you all, and the thing that makes it possible for me to be here is that all of you are here, and is all of the work that you're doing, because straight up, y'all will be the folks that I will be on the phone with to come and talk and figure out these policy solutions. And it's just going to be really amazing.
You all, there couldn't be any better reason to pull out your checkbooks, put out your cash apps, and write some support to Brandy Brooks. This is the moment. She is the candidate. You're hearing it directly, not just wanting to be on the council for herself, right? But recognizing that she's bringing all of us, all of our communities with her, expanding what it means to hold power, bringing a set of values that's visioning not only what's possible with shaking up wealth inequality, right? All of this segregation, as someone so beautifully said it earlier, in this county, but understanding that we have solutions. Tope has talked about it so powerfully. We are farmers, we are entrepreneurs, we are visionaries, we're authors. Thank you. Is she still on? Aya, thank you for the authors in the room. Dany, thank you, because the authors are writing the future, right? Visioning what's possible. And all of us are ready. We are here tonight, Brandy, because of you. But we know that it's not just tonight, and it's not only the resources, the financial resources, but it's bringing all of ourselves for this marathon that will bring about a fundamental change, not only in this county, but in this country and in the world. So we are with you, but we need you, Brandy, right now to tell us, okay, let's break it down. What needs to happen between now and primary day in July? What needs to happen? We're with you. What do we need to do? What is our marching orders from you, Brandy?
Well, thank you all. And again, I just want to say to Dany, to Rhonda, to Tope, I am exactly as excited about this conversation as I knew I would be, because this has been so fabulous, and it's a great way. We are 22 days, or actually now I think we're 21 days, 23 hours and 30 minutes away from the closing of the polls on primary day, July 19th. And so this is just a great boost to get as we head into these final 3 weeks. And what I am going to do, I am going to get my screen shared here, and then I am going to show us all what it is that we need to be doing over the course of the next 3 weeks. So let me share this screen, and away we will go. Okay, well, let's see. Okay. All right, this might be a little weird. Okay, so are folks seeing my slides right now? Let me just make sure that that's working properly. Okay, great. So let me just give you a little bit background on this race. I am running in the Democratic primary for County Council at Large. Our County Council, we totally have a total of 9 members. But in 2020, we voted on our ballots to expand our County Council. So now it will have 11 members. We will have 7 districts. So we've got new districts in the county, but we will still have our 4 at-large seats. And so I'm running for one of those 4 at-large seats. I'm one of 8 candidates in the race in that Democratic primary. And that primary election, that date is July 19th. Early voting will start July 7th. People can be mailing in their ballots now and dropping them off. So there are a lot of ways to vote, but the primary day for in-person voting is July 19th. And that process in the election, again, you can vote for up to 4 candidates in that at-large race. And the top 4 vote getters in the primary will become the Democratic nominees who go on to the general election. And one of the important features of Montgomery County is because our voter base is so heavily Democrats. We have over 400,000 Democrats compared to about a little over 100,000 Republicans. And then I think maybe another 200,000 folks who are either independents or some other party. Because we are so heavily Democrats, basically the folks who win the primary almost always end up being the people who will be elected in the general, because that's just how the numbers work. And so this is actually one of the things for all of our Montgomery County residents. The primaries are super important for us. A lot of times, folks, we're not taught to think about the primaries, and instead we wait to vote until the general. If we do that here in Montgomery County, we are going to miss out on most of our voter choice. So it's really important to get people turned out for July 19th. I do want to do a quick show, and Michelle, I'm going to ask you to grab that link where people can find out their redistricting. We do have these 7 districts, and they are a little bit new. They're different from our last 5 districts. And so you can see this is kind of the big map that shows how our districts have changed and shifted a little bit. I've gone from being in District 4 to now being in District 6. A lot of folks are still kind of trying to get their minds around what district am I in exactly, what may have changed for me. And so Michelle is going to be putting the link in the chat where you can go and you can actually examine a more detailed map and find that out. This is also something where you can get that information on the State Board of Elections website, where you can find out all of your districts for the council, all of your districts for your legislative districts, your congressional districts. All of these things have changed because this is, we're just after the 2020 census. So it's really important for us to get informed about where these things are. So I want to talk a little bit about my campaign. This is my 2nd time running for County Council at Large. And the reason I'm running, very similar to why I ran in 2018, is because I want us to bring a different frame to how we make policy. We've been hearing all throughout the evening about these leaders, folks who've lived in our county, folks who've worked in our county, who want to be able to bring their lived experiences, want to be able to bring all that they've learned, all that they've been able to do as professionals into our understanding of how we make public policy here in Montgomery County. And that's what I'm committed to. I don't think about community engagement as a, oh, this is the thing I have to do so nobody yells at me. I think about community engagement as this is the thing I get to do so that I have a better understanding, so that I am connected to the amazing people of this county, and so that I, as a legislator, will make better decisions. Because I am very clear that when we, I tell people this story, the way I frame it, I've got a great brain, but it is one brain. One brain is not going to adequately know all of the things that need to be known about how to make decisions for over 1 million people in this incredibly diverse county. So I need all of you. I need all of the wisdom and skill and experience from across this county to be a good policymaker. And I want to make sure that we are setting up structures that make it easy for people to connect with me, to connect with other members of the council, to connect with elected officials in other bodies, and to be right there in the center of the decision-making process, to be helping me set the legislative agenda, to be helping me craft legislation, to be helping me evaluate whether the choices that we've made in legislation or the choices that we've made in the budget have been effective at doing what we said we wanted to do. I want folks involved in every part of that process. And I want to make sure that we are including all of the voices of the people in our county, especially those who have been marginalized and who have been excluded in decision-making in our county, who have been harmed by decision-making in our county. I want to make sure that whether we are talking about Black and Brown and Indigenous folks, whether we are talking about folks who have immigrated here from all over the world, 30% of Montgomery County residents were born in a country other than the United States. We speak, in our school system, we talk about speaking, I think it's over 140 languages. We have to make sure that we don't just think about those as nice factoids, but that we think about those as that means that we need to operate differently to make sure that we aren't creating barriers or replicating injustices, and to make sure that in fact we are healing harms and injustices that have been done in the past, and really restoring people to be able to live full and thriving and joyful lives in our county. So that's how I work. That's what our platform is based on. And you can go and look at our platform on our website to learn more about the details of the different areas where I want to do this. So how do you get involved in all that we're doing? Number one, make sure that your family members, make sure that your neighbors, and make sure that your friends are ready to vote. As I mentioned, there's a lot of folks who don't realize that the primary elections are coming up or that they are important. So one of the number one things you can do, you can go on our website, again, to our voter hub. You can make sure that your registration is in order, check it for your partner, check it for your kids who are eligible to vote. If you have young people in your family or in your household who will be 18 by November 8th, even if they are 17 right now, they can register and they can vote in the primary. We want to make sure that our young people have access to the vote. We want to make sure that folks who have had engagement with the criminal justice system, that they know their rights about voting and know when they are eligible to vote. That's information that you can find on here. You can find information about how to vote by mail, about where the early voting sites are, about what election day voting will look like. And you can sit here and you can make your vote plan. So if you want to tell us, here's how I'm planning to vote so that we can support you and remind you and be excited with you about your plan to vote, we want to make sure that we can do that. So that's the first way. The second way, help make sure that we are turning out people who share our vision for a just and sustainable and thriving Montgomery County. We want to make sure that we have folks who are working with us at the polls all throughout early voting and on primary day to make sure that people know about the campaign, make sure that they can get materials and information about me and my platform, and make sure that they are prepared to go and vote for a thriving Montgomery County. So you can go again on our website, brandyformontgomery.com/GOTV, and you can come and help get out the vote with our team. You can share your information, let us know when you're available. And on this same form, there will be information about how you can be helping us to continue to contact voters even before they get to the polls, making phone calls, making texts. There are all these different ways, continuing to canvass at the doors, because we'll be doing all of that all throughout the next few weeks. And we want to definitely have folks engaged, and we need your people power in order to make sure that we can actually get out the vote in the way that we need to. And then the last piece, I am so proud to once again be using Montgomery County's public election fund, which means that I am financially accountable to the people who have contributed to me, not to big special interests, not to corporations, not to developers who don't really respect the impact of what they do, who aren't really committed to building a fully thriving and equitable county. And what that means, one of the great things about the public election fund is that whether you give $5 or $250, if you are a Montgomery County resident, your contribution gets matched by public dollars to make it more powerful. So if you give $25 or $50, that then translates into $125 or $250. If you give the maximum of $250 cumulatively that you can give, that translates into a total of $700 with the matching. I tell people, there's nowhere else where my money gets this kind of return. So please, I'm encouraging folks to contribute and also invite your friends and family. Tell them why it is so important to you to support this kind of powerful campaign, and ask them to contribute as well and to have their money multiplied. And you can see here, again, the minimum and the maximum. Each person in a household gives individually, so people don't give as couples. You give, each one of you can individually give up to that maximum of $250. Also, if you have young people in your household, so long as they control their own funds, they too can be contributors. And we have had young people in high school, in college, also making those contributions to be part of our movements. This is really, really powerful. And, you know, just to note, and I'll stop sharing here, we want to make sure that folks get connected, that they feel excited about what is going on in the county. I'm a community organizer. That's my background, is getting folks engaged and connected. And what I love, what I get passionate about, as you can see, is the idea that politics can actually be something that feels joyful to us, not something where we kind of feel despairing and not like we know, you know, just thinking, oh my goodness, what is happening? How do I get through this? But that it is something where we get to see, wait a minute, this is a place where I can connect with other people who are in my community, who share my values, who want to make positive change. And together, what we do makes a difference. That is what I want us to be experiencing in our politics and in our public policy every day, not just in an election year, but all along the way, in the way that I want to make policy with folks here in Montgomery County. So that's what I get excited about. I hope that you get excited too, because there's so much. And as I hear already from this conversation and from the rich questions that we've had, there's just such amazing knowledge and passion and vision within our county. And I want to bring that to the table and put it right in the center of the way that we make public policy. So, you know, and the last thing that I will say, you heard it from Tamara earlier, and I'm going to repeat it again. One of the things that folks who don't want us to be able to succeed, who don't want us to be able to advance these kind of visionary ideas, one of the things that they count on is that we will not organize. They count on that we won't get together and connect with one another. They count on us believing that we don't have the financial resources to make a difference. But I want to say there are folks on this call, and I want to thank you folks who have stepped up, who have contributed their financial resources, because you know that it makes a difference. And if you haven't had a chance to do that yet, I want to invite you to do that right now, because when you make that contribution, it makes a powerful difference in terms of what we are able to do, connecting to voters all across Montgomery County. And yes, even with just 3 weeks to go, your contribution will make a huge difference in who we can connect with and how we can get the word out and what the outcomes of that election will be on July 19th. So I really want to invite folks, if you are excited about what you have heard, this is the time to invest. This is the time to get fired up. And this is the time for us to show what our collective power can build together when we organize, and when we get fired up about the shared visions that we have and the possibilities for what we can create together. And so I will hand it back over to Amira.
Wow, couldn't be a better call to action. You all, we have 3 weeks. 3 weeks, the clock is ticking. Thank you to all who have already contributed. Thank you to all who have already gone out and made some calls to get others onto this website, brandyformontgomery.com, but also onto this movement, a movement that is powerful, that is building, that is us. Brandy has laid it out. If we want a county that lives into values, not only values of environmental justice and climate justice, values of racial equity in a county that is increasingly struggling with a racial wealth divide, a county that has 30% people born in other places, right? And that number, we know it's growing. So now is the time to invest in the leadership that's visionary, that is value-based, that is representing us. Progressive change for Montgomery County, for this state, the country, and the world. This is what Brandy represents. So I feel like the call for action has been made. We need to take a moment to just kind of thank everybody, starting with those who carved out time to be here, to participate, to lend your voice. We know we go from Zoom to Zoom. At times, days are long, but you've made a commitment already. You've opted in support of a progressive candidate from Montgomery County. Thank you for making time to be here, to hear directly from Brandy herself. We ask you to, yes, to donate. The revolution must be resourced, but to also know that there are so many other resources that are needed now. Would you reach out to those in your own household, to those in your neighborhood, your neighbors and friends right on your street, to those that you know live in Montgomery County and you may meet at the farm stand as you buy healthy foods from our sister Tope, right? Are you willing to also help with the organizing that's so valuable and so needed now, not only for Montgomery County, but for this country and the world? Would you commit to that and commit today? We thank you for making time to be here. We also thank our incredible hosts for today, Rhonda Chapman. We thank you. Tamara Tools O'Loughlin. We thank you, Dany Sigwalt. We thank you. There's some hosts who are actually remaining not public, but have lent their support tonight. We just thank them for all that they're doing to ensure that Montgomery County gets the leadership that we all need and deserve. So thank you to our hosts. Thank you to our speakers, Rhonda Chapman, Tope Fajingbesi, Balogun, Dany Sigwalt. Thank you so much, Dany Sigwalt, for all that you do and for your book. We just applaud you. Thank you so much. And of course, Tamara Tools O'Loughlin, thank you. But this evening would not have been possible without the incredible interpretation. So to our ASL interpreter, we say thank you. Our Spanish interpreter, that's for Jill and Sean. Our Spanish interpreters, Kandra and Jamie, muchas gracias. Our Amharic interpreter, Kidan and Rahel, Sebestiling, Amasikinala. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Also, this evening has been recorded. Amharic, it's Carol. Spanish is Rebecca. Thank you all for lending your technical expertise and your support. And last but not least, Michelle, our Zoomologist. Thank you so much for making this all happen. Woo-hoo! So the panel was amazing. We thank the speakers, audience, for your questions, your thoughtfulness, your organizing efforts going forward. We will live our values. We will live into the better world that we know is possible. We will begin with organizing where we are. Montgomery County deserves a leadership. The leader like Brandy Brooks, who is a leader of us all, for us all, will bring us all into the county council. So we ask you, organize, organize, organize. Go out there after tonight. As you get off the Zoom, reach out to at least one person tonight. Don't delay. Together, we are building a movement for change, and we need all the forces that we can. So we thank Brandy from the bottom of our hearts. We thank you. Sometimes leadership is tough. We know there are days when you're like, oh, I've fallen tears. I stepped up for this. We are so grateful that you have heard the call. We believe it is a call coming from our ancestors from generations back. It is a call coming from future generations demanding the leadership today that's needed to guarantee future generations. So we thank you for answering that call. And we say, stay strong. We're with you. We will continue to support you in every way that we can. Onward, Brandy Brooks, onward.
Amira, thank you so much. I want to make sure that we're saying thank you as well to Amira Woods, one of our outstanding hosts, and also an absolutely fabulous, as Michelle has said, MC. Just your grace and your passion and your joy in the work that you do and in this event tonight has been absolutely amazing. I want to close by echoing the thanks that Amira has already given and just say to everyone, I deeply appreciate these. These are the conversations that get me fired up. These are the conversations that I love. These are the conversations that I'm excited to keep having with all of you across Montgomery County, not only in the next 3 weeks, but hopefully in the next 4 years. So let's get out here, let's organize, let's continue holding these beautiful visions, this understanding of what is possible for us and for our communities. Let's take that into the rest of this week. And thank you so much for being here. Have an absolutely amazing night.